Shawnee, would you say that maybe that exists a little bit towards like what John was saying?
Yeah, I've worked with Five Eyes and we had incredible relationships, but you always in the back of your mind are like, not American.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm going to tell you what I can tell you, but there's 5 things I'm not going to tell you. So, and they do the same thing to us. That's how you do it.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
Yeah. And there can be a lot of successes from it. There's been a recent documentary exposed about the joint operation with Mossad to go after Ahmad Mugnia.
It's a good case.
What was it? Can you fill us in on that case?
So you might know more about this than me.
I haven't seen the documentary.
We did a joint operation with Mossad
to target a terrorist.
Does that ever happen these days? But go ahead.
I mean, we've partnered with countries that we are not friendly with in any other way except for counterterrorism. We've done joint counterterrorism operations in China that are well known, but this Ahmad Mugnia at the time was probably the most significant terrorist in the world, and almost no one knew who he was publicly.
Why not?
Everybody, it just wasn't something that was shared with the media.
And also the stuff like he bombed like the cultural center in Buenos Aires and things like it didn't affect Americans so much. And so when you're doing stuff in Latin America, it's not on the front page of the news. So a lot of people didn't know him.
Okay.
But he was major. He owned a mall in the tri-border area, which last time I said incorrectly because I was not thinking, but it's Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. I actually went there and went to the mall. It was when I was getting my master's in counterterrorism because you can't be an expert if you don't see it firsthand, right? But they had...
She's a wild card.
They had all kinds of smuggling operations. And when I was in one of the shops in the mall that he owned, I went into a camera store, and photography was one of my covers a lot of the time. And so I was not working. I was a student. This is before I even got hired. Okay. And I went in and I was looking at the cameras, and they were rock bottom prices. And when I was looking around on the TV in the store was Hassan Nasrallah, right, head of Hezbollah, and he's talking, and I was like, ooh, okay, all right, evidence, right? And started talking to the shop owner, and I was like, how do you get these cameras so cheap? And he's like, they fall off ships coming from Miami.
You're like, gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was the mission to take him down? How did that happen? I'm not familiar.
It was a joint operation. I forget where he was. I think they put a explosive device in the hubcap of a car that they knew he would be walking by when they eventually got him and detonated.
Oh, wait, what year is this?
2008. I was in the farm. I remember I was telling Matthew I was in class at the farm when they came in and said, hey, we got him.
Can you explain that again? So they put it in the hubcap, and then when he was walking by, they had someone up at, like in a window to click it kind of thing?
They had a remote detonator for it and timed it to where as he was passing that it would go off. But they had tried to do this multiple times, but if there's somebody else walking by that would be collateral damage, you got to call it off. Predicting he's going to be walking right there on that street at this time is incredibly difficult. But it's a great documentary. Douglas London, who is an agency case officer, is featured in it, and they did a really good job.
What's it called?
It's Ghosts of Beirut.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm unfamiliar. It's similar though. Like if you look at the case of that when they went to track down, I have a picture from the movie Munich over there in the studio.
Operation Wrath of God.
Yeah, but when like a lot, I love how at the beginning of that movie they're like, "This is a fictional movie." No, the fuck, it's not. Yeah. This is very, very real, like down to almost every single detail. But I forget the main guy, the main plotter of the 72 Munich attacks. I forget his name, but they failed to get him in the movie, but they did later get him, I think maybe in like 1980 or whatever, and that's how they did it. They did it in like they had a remote up in the window. This is like 1980, and either he was driving by or walking by one of them, and that was that.
It wasn't Salome, was it?
Maybe. I think that's it. Yeah, it is Salome. That's it. Yeah. He was like kind of like a movie star, like a rock star a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, they got him. They had some guy like join his sauna or something like that, like the bathhouse, and become friends with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it the
maybe he swung both ways. I don't know.
Unintended.
Yeah, that's right. Little male honey trap. But yeah, I don't know. But they joined something like that, became friends with them, and then had the information, and they knew where it was going to be, and they got him.
I'll tell you what, that's always how it goes. You know, you grow up watching movies about all the cool things you're going to get to do, and they tell you to join a bathhouse. With this guy.
Why didn't I get to do anything like that? Damn it.
That's one of the things Bustamante always jokes about. He's like, you always think you go into it and it's going to be like James Bond and every chick you work with is hot, and then it's like a 400-pound trans lady and you're like, fuck,
yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah, that's every time.
I asked him once if he had to get in on the action, and he didn't give me a good look. So I was like,
he just did a...
It's like, you know what? I wouldn't want to trade places with you. No, thanks. But back to your story, Matt. So you become this guy. What we covered last time is after about a year, you somehow end up going to this bar that was frequented by organized crime members. Mm-hmm. On a kind of like whim, you end up making friends with a guy who's high up in the biker gang. Mm-hmm. Initially with a guy who's lower, but you knew the high up guy would literally come and clean out the bar because his girlfriend was the bartender.
That's right.
Right? And so then you get into the biker gang. You're a money launderer, so you kind of rise up. You're doing some narcotics trafficking and stuff. 3.5 years goes by. You eventually get arrested for aggravated assault, of which you said you were guilty, correct?
I mean, technically, yeah.
So guilty as charged. Yeah. Anyway, so you get a deal to go on probation. This is what kind of blew my mind. You literally went to the biker gang and you're like, yeah, fam, I'm out. And they were just good with that?
Yeah. I mean, if this isn't like, you know, it was back in the day, this isn't like some blood in, blood out, you know.
We've really lost our standards around here.
Yeah. So, especially because what I expressed was that, you know, I had been approached by law enforcement during my arrest, and that I thought that me being around going through this was going to bring undue attention to the club, and that I wanted to step away for a while I was going through the legal process of it. And they weren't arguing to say like, no, bring us, you know, give us some more trouble. Yeah. So.
And so you effectively leave and you don't deal with those guys again.
Right. Now
you had said, this is where we're picking up. You had said that while you were in the biker gang, you made some connections with the cartel. And this is basically where we got cut off. So what happened there?
Yeah, so the person that I was introduced to is what's referred to as a bulk cash smuggler. So
sounds legit.
Put that on your resume.
Yeah, it's his LinkedIn profile. Yeah. So essentially what his job was is that every time something's sold on the street, right, you get a $20 bill, $100 bill, this all gets compiled and collected. And then once it reaches a certain amount, that person needs to smuggle the cash, you know, somewhere. And so that was his role. He had some funny instances of trying to do this. Luckily, I wasn't in the car with him at the time when he would do it. But he told me right when I met him that he had recently been arrested with a bunch of the cash in the back seat. And so, you know, if that's exposed, right, if you see a certain dollar amount, law enforcement, that's, you know, the right to search.
Red
you know.
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So they can search your car if they see like, you know, a box full of.
But he got away. Like they let him go, obviously.
Well, so what happened is they arrest him. They find all this bulk cash on him. He says that he's delivering it for a casino, which is perhaps the dumbest.
Were there any
excuse.
casinos in the area?
Probably not. He's basically like running it, you know, instead of like an armored truck or something. He's trying to explain that was him. It's terrible. And so they arrest him. At this point, they have, I believe it was 48 hours to prove that the confiscated money was, you know, in connection to a crime, to hold it and to hold him. And this didn't happen. And so 48 hours or however long the statute was, he gets out.
The cash back.
But here's what's interesting. They didn't just give him his duffel bags full of cash back. They wrote him a check, a government check for the refund of his money, and they laundered his money for him, you know, unknowingly. So he's just bragging, you know, about this like one of the first times I met him.
What a good break.
Yeah.
So he's good.
Yeah, he was good. They let him go.
And you meet him, and you still decide to work with this guy who's driving around with cash in his backseat like a fucking moron.
I mean, sometimes you don't get to pick the people that you're rolling with, But he was kind of like the first entree.
But did you call up base like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this guy's kind of... We got to mark that, sorry. Like, do we work with him? And they're like, yeah, fuck it. Is that what happens?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so you're constantly making what we call contact reports, right? So I'm writing everything up. Maybe the most laborious part of the job.
I liked him.
You liked what?
Writing contact reports.
Of course you did.
You can have them. I mean, especially, you're hanging out with somebody till 2 a.m, drinking, and after you're done, they get to go pass out, and you got to try to write a coherent, novel about everything that just happened. Yeah. I'm sure some of mine were not.
I would pay money to read those right now.
Yeah. You get like one level of drunk more, and then you're like, oh, it makes sense. Like the Da Vinci Code just.
Right. It's all there.
Yeah.
Now, you're not putting this in like a Microsoft Word doc, I take it, right?
No.
What about Google Drive?
Probably these days.
They might do it these days.
I'm joking.
So we can hack them.
Oh, you got to collaborate, but.
Imagine that, like, oh, it turned out the CIA was using Google Docs this whole time. So is there, I guess you can't go into classified stuff, but is there anything cool in the departments of like, radio transmissions or stuff like that, without saying specifically, are there ways where that's literally how you're putting these reports through, or is that more just for communication?
Sure. I mean, so you're talking about what we call COVCOM, or covert communication techniques.
COVCOM.
And I can't talk about any of the modern ones, but if you go to the Spy Museum or look during the Cold War, they had some amazingly innovative ways back then to do this. Even from taking something that looks like a normal device, and you take it apart in these ways and you put it back together in this funny way, and suddenly it can communicate with securely with who you're supposed to. It's the people that work in those shops.
They're brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a job I always wanted to do, actually. Yeah, there's some fun stuff.
That actually does sound pretty fun.
Yeah.
If you ever saw like the story of Ellie Cohen, they made like a Netflix miniseries on that.
Yeah.
Obviously a pretty famous one, but that was like 1958, 59, 60.
Yeah.
And he was using like a Morse code kind of like transmitter or whatever.
Honestly, a lot of the old stuff, like the microdots and stuff, I think it would be brilliant to be used now. We're now so reliant on technology. There's RF signals and everything, Wi-Fi. Now all the threat actors are basically hiding in plain sight, because right now 4 of us are in this room. We all have devices. There's ones and zeros flying around us at all times. So you inject something that's just hiding in plain sight, you can't see it. But putting an old school physical microdot on something, no one's going to see that. No one's going to detect that. I say we go back old school.
Well, it used to be, what was it, the number stations that they called them back during the Cold War. There were these outposts that served the function of passing along these types of transmissions. And, some of those are still in use. I don't know who's using it, but
I would actually think that this would be one thing where we'd want to go technologically backwards on for a lot of the points you're making, Shawnee, because there are so many vulnerabilities in every little thing that so much as nicks the Wi-Fi.
Yep.
Or, whatever, the LTE,
Yep.
all that stuff. Like, I always think about it, and I try not to get too worried about it because my life's not that serious. I'm a fucking podcast host, but it's like, are all the drones listening to us?
Well, they were a couple months ago around here.
Low blow. Too soon. Table. We'll table that. But I'm just saying, like the regular drones, like, are they listening to us? Is this thing marking down everything I say?
Yes.
And probably thinks I'm fucking crazy based on the people I talk with.
Yes.
Like, is there someone back at like Langley, like, God damn, this YouTuber. Oof. Like, does that kind of, I don't like how you're breathing right now.
I was going to say, I wonder what his code name is.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
We should find out. I will say that there's a huge difference between information that is collected and information that is analyzed, right? And so if you think about all the information that's, grabbed from everywhere in the world, from every type of means, the percentage that it actually, like, somebody is going to put eyes on that is, oh my gosh, minuscule. And so you would have to be elevated to a certain level to get, that attention, which, in my old profession, that's part of the goal, right? Like if I'm in another country, I know they're collecting on me. I just don't want to be so important that they actually go through it and try to break
squirrely.
it down.
You don't want to be so important or like squirrely.
What do you mean
like,
squirrely?
Like, why is that person acting that way?
Right.
Right? When you're doing your surveillance detection routes in another country or you're doing your cover stops, you want to blend in, like he was saying earlier. If you are doing things strangely, you're raising your profile, then they're going to start, they're going to put bigger teams on you. They're going to put teams that pull away so you don't know you have a team behind you. You want to lull them into a sense of complacency. And if you break that, you're screwed.
All right, first question, and then I'll bring it back to First Amendment stuff. Remind me that on America. But like any of us, anyone listening right now, if we travel to certain countries that are high octane, not friendly countries, every time we go to their airport, are they sucking up all our data completely?
Yeah, don't bring your personal devices, number one. Period. Full stop.
Wish you told me that.
That's why so many companies nowadays, the smart ones, have travel policies where you bring what's called like a clean laptop or a clean cell phone. You're not bringing your personal device.
You're nodding over here, Brian.
Yeah, write that down.
Do you gotta do that at work?
I do. Yeah. I have 2 separate laptops,
See?
just one that's clean, like without company data, and then one that I, use my client stuff with.
Yeah,
So.
you have to. And also a lot of people think that when they're going to another country, well, they're not going to know who I am. I'm not important. You're filling out a customs form with your name and your address and where you work and where you're staying. Like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Just based on content, there's a couple countries I wasn't that interested in going there.
Right. It's not going to ruin your holiday plans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, on the other side of that coin is seeding information when you're in cover.
Seeding?
Right. So if I'm going to take a device through an airport when I was working, right, when I was an intelligence officer, and I know they're going to look at it, this is an opportunity for me to reinforce my cover. So I'm going to put a bunch of documents that they will find that say the exact same things that the story I'm going to tell everybody the whole time are. And that makes it seem more legit than if I just show up with a device that's got one phone number on it and no documents.
Yeah.
And then I say, I'm a businessman here. It doesn't work that way.
Physically, you would call it pocket litter. Like what's in your pocket? Do you have a receipt from the coffee shop that you allegedly go to all the time? Do you have your ID? Like it's pocket litter. But now you need digital pocket litter is basically what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. The old school pocket litter always reminds me of the story when they sent that GRU officer to London to do the Skripal op, and he actually had a taxi receipt still on him from their government headquarters.
Bad pocket litter.
That's bad.
He never got seen again.
That's bad.
We call that bad
litter.
tradecraft.
That was the one that they failed, right? The guy didn't die. It wasn't Litvinenko, they got him. But the other guy you're talking about, he didn't die, right? He got really sick from the
he was
polonium.
hospitalized.
Right. Yeah.
He was like with his
That was the
daughter
one
or
where they
something.
did the they sprayed the perfume on the doorknob thing.
Yeah, they are brazen, man. The fucking GRU and FSB, they're just like, well, fuck you. We'll come on.
Good.
We don't care. We'll come on your territory and whack somebody.
They're
and
aggressive.
know they get caught and don't care.
They're aggressive.
Are they the most aggressive?
Not in
It
my
depends.
opinion.
I think it depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah, the type. You're right. The type of operation is different. You could say that Mossad's a pretty forward-leaning intelligence
that would have been my
agency.
vote. Yeah.
As far as their willingness to accept risk of exposure
And
for
think
their
outside
operation.
the box.
What do you mean? Think outside the box?
Outside the pager, if you will.
That was pretty impressive. I do have to say.
I'd like to meet the person that came up with that idea.
Yeah. They're sitting in some back room. So we take the pagers. They blow up. That's it. I think that was a Russian accent, but whatever. We'll let it pass.
That's a good. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
That's a great example of the covert finance thing I was trying to explain earlier. Those companies that they had set up all over the world to do this, that money's got to come from somewhere. And so moving it through those companies is one example of what that would look like.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going back to the op thing. When you're talking what type of ops, there are nation states who are looking at foreign espionage and they're stealing information on our companies, right? our trade secrets, our intellectual property, and they're very brazen.
Yes.
And they don't care about rules, and they don't care about laws, and they will do whatever it takes. They'll attack a company in 50 different ways, from cyber to in-person human, and they take no prisoners.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat the whole thing. You and I talked about it last time. You know what I'm going to talk about, that story I brought up where my guy was asked to come in and mediate between a CIA person who was told to go to the CEO of a major company and say, I'm in the CIA. And it got weird because essentially, Shawnee, without going through the whole thing, they were told by CIA they had been inside this major league company that people would know who it was. And they were told to go to this high-level person, told to go to the CEO and expose themselves and say, hey, I'm here as CIA. And it gets weird because you're not supposed to operate on American soil.
Right.
But it actually, like, constitutionally, it was freaking me out. And then I also saw, like, how they made the argument to say we should do this, because they didn't go to the company and say, like, oh, you guys are in trouble or anything. They're like, you guys do everything right. We keep doing what you're doing. We want to help protect because you're a multinational organization and there's a lot of shit that you don't see that's going on that if we're here, we can take care of that. You don't have to worry about it. And it gets very gray area, but I see where those arguments are made to want to have access to something like that.
Yeah. I don't envy the lawyers back there that
No.
have to figure all this stuff out all the time. But
No thanks.
Well, they just, they go to the judge and they say, do you like your dog? You like your wife? You like them? And then when they say no, they're like, do you like your guma? And then they go, yeah. And then they say, okay, you're going to hit this little FISA, whatever, and be good. But I said we would table the First Amendment part about like sucking data and everything because I hear where you're coming from when you're like, there's a difference between collection and analyzing?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear you. The fact that the government, though, could collect on everyone, even if they're not going to analyze it. This is where Snowden's argument comes in, and I hear it. It's like, do you see why people would be like, this is the road paved to hell with good intentions and the slippery slope? Because technically, you do have access to everyone's stuff. Even if you're like, listen, we don't care about you and your $10 million a year business doing fucking paving. But, like, you have my shit. And if I pissed off the wrong person one time and the wrong person in government decides, you know what, fuck this guy, and they can go access that information and do whatever they're going to do with it, like, that does freak people out. Do you understand why like, I'm freaked out by that?
After you.
I was going to say what you're talking about is insider threat, really. People, when you describe it like that, allowing one person to have access to stuff like that without checks and balances, that's all insider threat. That's someone who has malicious intent, who is abusing their access, who is doing something stupid, right? The problem is in every company and in every government, you have humans running them and humans with access to things that are high level and sensitive. And that's a very real threat, no matter what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I have this belief that, like, when you look at world history, and I think this will be backed up, good wins over time. Like, look where we are now versus 2,000 years ago. Like, light years of progress and ahead. Still got our problems, but, like, we invented new problems. That said,
Just a couple.
In the short term, it's easier for evil to win. And the way I say that is if I have a room filled with 100 people, 99 of them are evil and one of them is good, we're fucked. Unless it's Jesus. If I have a room filled with 100 people, 99 of them are good and one of them is evil, we might still be fucked.
Yes. All it takes is one, depending on their level of access or motivation. Look at Joshua Schulte. He was a CIA software engineer. He worked in a very small office. They worked on very sensitive things that, RF and hacking into people's TVs and cool stuff like that.
Hacking into people's TVs?
This is paraphrasing. Read the New York Times.
Turn that fucking
But the problem is the culture within his little office was like a rowdy frat house, right? People threw things at each other. They had Nerf guns. They, swore all the time. This didn't sit well with him. And so they actually gave him a nickname, a nuclear option. That was his office nickname, which is not really flattering.
No.
Right? So the problem is that nobody intervened to say, okay, clearly we have a problem, right? This person is getting disgruntled or is disgruntled. We need to address it in some way, shape, or form. He left. He left the office. Everyone's like, well, fuck him. A couple months later, the largest leak of CIA documents in history was published on WikiLeaks. Now, he was prosecuted. It was pretty clear who did it, right? But what was interesting to me is the prosecution's theory was that the reason he did it, his motivation, was spite. So one person, a lot of access, he just wanted to fuck everybody.
That's what I'm saying. There's 2.4 million government employees.
How many now, though? What are your metrics accurate?
We might be down to 2.2 either way. You know, we'll see how far Elon goes with this. But yeah, I for one, I could live with some people at the DMV going.
But they're so nice.
I could also live with some of the bureaucracy going for sure. I think this is such a great opportunity for Elon. I just hope he does it right and doesn't fuck it up, because he's a little bit wild. But I think the Doge thing is pretty cool. That said, it does come back to the tragedy of the one. And you are, to be fair, you're actually making my point for me right here, that it can cost you when there's, you got one leak in the ship somewhere. So, I do come down on this side more. We've talked about this before, but with Snowden, I understand why some of you guys in intelligence don't like him. I get it. But, I think he had a slippery slope on both sides. It was the slippery slope of breaking the chain of command and technically breaking the paper that I signed, or the slippery slope of this anti-constitutionalism being thrown through secret courts is going to keep on paving the road to hell, and no one's done anything about it in a decade. So I'm going to do something. And it comes back to this exact point, which is that, Matt, I think you're a good guy. I don't think you'd give a fuck about my data or do anything with that. But fucking Rob in the back office over there who was working on your case with you, guy's a scumbag. And I don't see Rob, and I don't know what Rob's going to do to me, and maybe Rob's going to WikiLeaks me. I don't know what he would do with me, but you understand what I mean. There are people out there. There could be someone listening right now who actually is an important person. They run a multinational company. I'd be worried if I were in their seat with stuff like this.
But, and I know this is something, there's stuff people can do to mitigate this, substantially.
Like what?
From technology to employee lifecycle management to training and awareness to insider threat programs. There's a whole metric list of things that companies and organizations can do to substantially reduce the human risk that they have. And everybody has human risk. I don't care what industry, I don't care what company, I don't care what you do you employ humans? Because if you do, you have human risk. Now, human risk is different than human, insider threat, right? Insider risk is the fact that you employ humans. We make mistakes, we take shortcuts, we fall asleep on the job, what have you. Mm-hmm. Insider threat is when someone unintentionally clicks that phishing link and screws the whole company.
Right.
Or maliciously is I'm going to leak everything to WikiLeaks, right? Or they're compromised. They have a really shitty password and someone hacks that and the whole company gets thrown out, systems down. That's insider threat. And both of those categories, risk and threat, there's a metric ton of stuff people can do to mitigate those. They're just not doing them.
Yeah. And, from, being somebody that went to other countries and stole information for a living, you always want it to be on the lighter side, right? So what I mean is that, let's say somebody works in an office that has access to information that, somebody's trying to get a hold of. It would be, and let's say it's you, right? It would be a lot easier to switch out your thumb drive when you weren't looking, that you would take back and plug into your computer at work, than to talk you all the way into hey, why don't you risk your job here, right? So, good.
No, sorry. I get excited about this stuff. You can't tell.
So you're always looking for the lightest way to where the person is either unwitting, completely unwitting, or semi-witting before you're just hey, can you give me the keys to the kingdom here?
The least amount of noise.
Yep. Yeah,
essentially.
Think about conferences. All these conferences that all these people go to every year in Vegas or wherever, right?
Aren't you doing one at Madison Square Garden tomorrow?
I am. Yeah.
Talking in front of the whole stadium?
In Vegas later this month.
Wow.
But
Julian Dorey podcast blowing people up.
But these conferences, a lot of the companies that are the vendors that are there, they have giveaways. Everyone loves a giveaway, right? They have tote bags so you can fill it with your giveaways. Yeah. But people are doing USB connected, a mouse or speakers or a watch or pick something, right? Even just a thumb drive. Those are all threat vectors. Like, to anyone listening, do not take those. Do not plug them in. Do not. There were cases where, I don't remember if we talked about this, where like U.S. military were getting like watches in the mail.
No, we
And
did
they,
not talk about this.
You know, and this is not
they
too long
started
ago.
wearing the
They started wearing the watches. They plugged them into their computers. Now their whole Wi-Fi network is compromised. Like, it goes on and on and on. But because people inherently are trusting, when someone gives you something, you're like, oh, thank you. That was so thoughtful. And then you're going to go use it. So again, awareness and making sure your employees understand just how vulnerable they are to dumb stuff like that. I had an op where I had a person who I gave them a very special thumb drive, and they plugged it in, and the U.S. intelligence community still owns that network.
They own it?
We can see everything going on in it.
How far ahead is your technology back there at CIA, DIA, NSA?
I wasn't in the shop. I'd like to be in the shop.
I don't know specifically. It's probably like tech by tech, but I heard, back during the Cold War that they were saying it essentially takes about 10 years at that time for it to leak out.
Yep.
I think because of, Silicon Valley now, and it's probably quicker. I don't think it's a full 10 years.
Yeah, because they work for you guys.
But, we definitely compete for the same people coming out of, college to work for us, competing for that talent. But I think it's a little quicker now, but I had heard the 10-year quote.
It has to be.
It's got to be a lot easier, though, to just let the talent get hired by them and put a little fucking tracking device on them, and then, you got everything you need, right? Why go through the interview process? You're talking the least amount of noise, right?
Yeah. Let's not
seems
make this
pretty
harder
quiet.
than it needs to be here.
That's right. And then while we're on that topic, by the way, because I always ask all you guys about this, I don't know if we talked about this on either of your podcasts, but did you guys ever have any look through the DARPA? The stuff they were doing. Did you ever hear anything about that?
No, but there's cool stuff.
Yeah. I heard they were fucking talking to dolphins telepathically in 92.
Yeah, ask Lawler about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had talks about that.
Why do I feel like he's working there?
He was a dolphin trainer.
Yeah, he scares me.
He's awesome.
I do know a lady who was a 06 in the Navy that was a dolphin trainer for her last assignment.
It's like that movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah. The guy, Colonel Alexander.
I worked with a guy who was in that program.
Yeah, what?
That stuff was real. Like, they really did that stuff.
Remind me in the movie, though, did they actually talk about, was that involving the remote viewing?
Right.
It's like the metaphysics.
Like Stargate?
Remote viewing, yeah.
Yeah, Project Stargate and all that? Yeah. My friend Jesse just talked with Joe McMonagle, who was a part of that. Some of that, I could see. Like some of it, it sounds hard. It sounds like no fucking way, and then you're like, "Well, we did figure this out. How the fuck did we do that?" Like, did you guys ever come across some people that could just do some crazy shit, and you're like, "That can't be explained"?
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Who'd you come across?
She can do stuff like that. Lawler, he's one of those guys that is very in touch with that.
Lawler's remote viewing.
Oh no, not remote
viewing.
viewing.
No.
He was in my parents' house. All right.
I mean,
it's just like
having that psychological connection with people. But during the remote viewing stuff, they've done tests where somebody would sit in a room, right? There'd be another room where they would flip a quarter or something like that, and they would get good enough to where it's not mathematically possible, with how random numbers work, to be that accurate. There have been tests that have been published outside of like the intelligence community that have shown stuff like that.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
You guys seen the podcast or heard the podcast, the telepathy tapes?
Mm-mm.
No.
So what really, really viral in the fall, this lady, Kai Dickens, looked into this phenomenon where there's been a lot of parents around the world who are parents of nonverbal autistic kids who are like, yo, my kids can read minds. Which, we're wired to be like, well, that sounds fucking crazy. She went and took a scientist and a psychiatrist and went and did double-blind tests with these kids and actually had the father of one of the kids in here, Scott Sherwood. He was in here recently for episode 280. And, I listened to the podcast and I'm like, holy shit, I don't know if it's telepathy, but there's something there.
Yeah.
This is not like, they're not dragging kids' fingers or anything. It's like, how did they know this? And you kind of wonder, not to get like way too meta here, but you know, if we're living in this multi-dimensional reality and all the things the physicists who come in here and talk to me about, it's like, is there some like glitch in the matrix, no pun intended, where there's just certain people that, you know, have something? I mean, she was saying in the podcast, like Kai Dickens was, we just accept scientifically that savants exist. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's scientifically proven. A kid can fucking come out and sound like Beethoven. Yeah. Oh, he can do math like Einstein. Yeah, no, that makes sense. But then it's like, yo, I think autistic kids can talk to each other. Shut the fuck up. No, they can't.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, we got to question this stuff a little. And when you look at guys like Joe McMoneagle, who allegedly have been able to do things like this, and some of the tests you're talking about, it's like, you know, what does the CIA know that I don't?
If they do, they didn't tell me.
Yeah, me neither.
I think it might have been the next year that I didn't make it to.
Right.
It was a different cool kids club.
Yeah.
Damn it, CCP. Why'd you have to dox the guy? How many countries can't you go to now?
I mean, there's a difference between can't and I'm smart enough to not. I wouldn't go anywhere that isn't currently having a great relationship with the United States. I wouldn't go anywhere that had a better relationship with an adversary country than us. My travel schedule's a little tight for the near future.
Yeah, I can imagine that for sure. Quickly, though, I didn't want to lose this in the point you were making, Shawnee, about the, you know, like insider risk and stuff like that. One of the things you're working on a lot, we were talking very briefly off camera, so I didn't really get any information, but you said you're dealing with a lot of like AI related threats with some of the companies that you're working with. What does that look like now?
Yeah. So with AI changing every freaking second of the day, it's individuals, it's families and companies, right? You have to look at each piece, each component. But AI is being used in such creative, unusual ways to target people for fraud, for insider threat, for corporate espionage, et cetera, when we're talking companies. But just looking at individuals and families, right? You've got deep fakes and voice cloning who are duping grandparents into thinking their kid was in a car accident and they need to send money, or deep fakes and voice cloning being used against CEO, you know, against people who think the CEO is calling to transfer money and they're transferring $25 million. I mean, the threats, I mean, there's a long list of things that AI has caused. It's lowered the barrier to entry for threat actors. It's made everything so easy, right? Yeah. And so these organizations, any company out there needs to recognize that this is a massive threat. In fact, I think it's 51% of C-suite leadership don't think AI has caused them any additional risk.
What?
Yeah, if you know anybody, please tell them to contact me.
Yeah, they should all be fired immediately.
Stupid. But the thing is, so we've got all of these new threats and all of these new threat vectors, but there are tons of inventions with AI now that help organizations battle AI to AI, right? Battle
AI to AI?
Yeah, so using AI, to detect deep fakes, or to detect when Matthew's on the critical pathway to do something stupid within the organization. There are platforms that have been invented where AI can basically assess his normal pattern of behavior, like we were talking about earlier, and it can read all of his communications on the corporate systems. Everyone's monitored anyway on every system. Everyone knows that. There's usually a banner when you log in.
But I don't like you nodding your head over there.
He's like, doing it right now.
Fucking Deloitte.
But it can detect, you know what? Matthew is sad, and he has a flight risk.
Oh, the Aura ring? It reads into that?
It reads into, not the Aura ring, but then I'm fucked. It reads into everything, and it can basically alert security teams that this person is going to do something stupid and become an insider threat. So the company can then act left of boom, if you will, ahead of the person doing the dumb thing. They can say, hey, here's some EAP support, here's some time off, whatever the situation calls for. They can use AI to detect when malware has been deployed, that, you know, AI invented malware that gets smarter and figures things out as it's moving around your systems. They can use AI to battle that. There's basically, you know, it's this fire now, AI against AI, but so many companies, A, don't recognize the risk truly, and B, they don't invest in the security tools or the processes or the insider threat programs to actually combat what's going on. It's super interesting stuff.
I'll give you an example of both sides of the coin where it's helping and where it hurts for my old role. So we, you know, they still have what we refer to as targeting officers that will put together information on somebody that someone in my role is going to go approach, right? So if I'm going to go talk to this person, we know they're going to be in that bar at this time. they will put a ton of information together after analyzing their phone, after looking through emails. But this is a person at the time, right, doing this. Sometimes they'll have a psychologist look at the information first and seed someone like me with the hints of how to gain compliance from this person socially.
Whoa.
Well, AI is just ramped that, through the roof, because it can look at, your pornography history. It can look at every single thing all put together and say, this is the exact type of person, like looks wise, that would be the best approach to come after you. This is, if they should be a man or a woman would work better against you. And it can do this so quickly.
Yeah.
So it's like, get me a Khalifa in here right now.
Yeah, even just looking, not even businesses, but individuals, right? There's AI now that threat actors are using to basically pull all the data from your social media platforms to do exactly what he's talking about. Not only can they do that to create or craft a phishing email that is super specific and unique to you that they know you would click on, but they can also use it for these scams. So that's how they harvest your voice, for example. So you call grandma and say you were in a car accident, like I'd mentioned, they're getting your voice from some social media post that you posted or from one of your, you know what I mean? So it's all AI generated.
Let's say I was in another country and I'm trying to create an insider threat at this company that I'm trying to steal something from. And I'm moving that insider threat, right, into doing more and more naughty things for me, right? So if I start the relationship off, I just want to know that they'll break a rule, like have a beer during the workday when they're not supposed to, right? And then we're going to move them down this path, what we call the primrose path in this profession, towards doing a big action of stealing something. Well, like she just said, if somebody like her was advising this company at the time and they're using the AI she talked about, it might detect that I'm changing that person's life and their pattern of behavior because they're taking longer lunch breaks and they seem different when they're coming back because I just got the guy drunk. And so that makes it harder in that way as well.
Now, if we're not talking at a governmental level where y'all have fucking access to everything, apparently.
I wish.
If I'm in the private sector trying to do like massive scams on Fortune 100 CEOs utilizing AI, and obviously we're using all the tools like voice faking and stuff like that, but before we get there, let me paint a scenario. Let's say a Fortune 100 CEO is being smart. He's using a VPN on his home Wi-Fi, like not even his office Wi-Fi. And you want to try to find if he's done anything compromising on there, maybe been on Ashley Madison or something like that. Is the AI in the private sector powerful enough? I might sound really dumb asking this question, but I really don't know. Is it powerful enough that it could read the ISP address, read the VPN, and get to the end user and who it was right there, provably that could then be used against him?
Oh, I don't doubt it, quite frankly.
Same. Yeah.
But not even that. You're talking about the CEO being smart. Let me back you up for a second.
Yeah.
That CEO has a wife and kids. Well, let's say that CEO has a husband and kids, right? It could be a woman CEO, right?
Yeah, there's a few of them.
So
slipped through the cracks.
what that CEO doesn't realize is that those family members or the visitors that they have that connect to their Wi-Fi, their family when grandma visits or whatever, those people are all walking vulnerabilities too. Those are all walking human risk, right? So when that kid clicks on some cheat code for Roblox, that network is compromised.
Brian, get off my Wi-Fi right now. I did not mean to give that to you. I don't know. I don't know this person.
The kid thing you mentioned reminds me of the toy op. This is more of an analog version of it, I guess. This is years ago, maybe.
Wait,
5
why
or
do
6
I know this? Tell the
years
story.
ago. So I'm going to say it kind of broad in case like most of this isn't out. But we wanted to go after somebody who is a very high-ranking official in a country that hates us very, very, very much.
Right.
And they're having a very difficult time figuring out how to do it. And in that country, certain types of Western toys you can't buy there. So this high-ranking official wanted to get his granddaughter a toy that you couldn't buy locally. and was going to send his security detail to do this purchase. Well, at the time, it was like you'd get one of those little CD-ROMs that came with it so you could interact with the toy, back then. And so during this operation, they knew where the store was that they were going to buy from. And so they switched the CD out of each one of the toys.
Was the store outside of Iran, obviously?
The store was outside of the target country, yes.
I feel like I got it.
And so they bring the toy back, and not only does the granddaughter play with this, but he plugged the CD into his work laptop.
Gotcha.
His government laptop. And as she said with the other one, we owned that for a while.
Granddaughter's insider threat.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being at like NSA, like, gotcha, bitch!
Just popping champagne.
I always wonder what the dude at NSA must have felt like every time he blew up their nuclear reactor, like with the Stuxnet. He's like, they think they're getting it? No, the fuck you're not.
That's a good day on the job.
Yeah, a lot of guys like,
had some drinks.
Meanwhile, they're all going to get lined up and shot outside because they just failed the experiment. But, collateral damage. That's how we look at it. But yeah, AI scares me.
Yeah.
The one now here's the one maybe bright side scenario. If some organization like DARPA is 30 to 50 years ahead, that would mean they're far beyond in AI and have been for a while, which means we already could have been living in a dystopian AI reality, and things are okay. I got a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Feel like I have some freedom. Maybe that's dwindling away, but maybe it'll be all right, because I do try to look at this not from the lens of like doomer with it. It's not to say you don't look at threats, but in my old studio I used to have two pictures on top of each other. The top picture was the nuclear bomb test at Bikini Atoll in like 46 or 47 or 48, where you just see the whole place is blown up. And the bottom picture was a redoing of the picture of the hand of God in Adam, but instead of the hand of Adam or the hand of God, it was a robot hand. And the idea was like, all right, the threat had been nuclear, which always still is a threat, but now it's AI potentially. But here we are 80 plus years into having a nuclear bomb. We haven't done it to each other yet, despite all the hatred that does exist between countries. So it's like, maybe we figured out enough. The difference is with AI, it can get out of control because it's another entity. It's not the nuclear bomb the bombs can't talk to each other. Well, AI might make them do that, but like, I don't like that. You right away were like, the fuck they can. But like, you know what I mean? It's a different stratosphere because you're creating something that even if it's not sentient, like that's scary. But even before then, like even Facebook had that famous story in 2016 or 15 or something, where they quietly invented an AI and suddenly, or two AIs, and they started inventing their own language and talking to each other.
Yeah,
and Zuckerberg just like pulled the plug.
It was Google, I think. Whoever,
one of them.
Yeah. But I mean, with AI now, like it needs human intervention, right? There are so many case studies, actually a lot of really funny stories that just kind of prove that it's not taken off on its own yet, right? There was a security robot in Washington, D.C. that was used in some like security complex. And it was supposed to just, monitor and keep track and stuff. This thing drowned itself in a fountain within a week. And employees were joking like that it had like committed suicide, for the job. But it just proves
they wanted to feel something.
Right. You need human interaction and interventions.
What was the one with the broken finger?
Oh, there was I think it was in 2022, there was a like international chess tournament and like people playing against AI. And this 7-year-old kid made a move on the board so rapidly that the computer didn't know what to do and basically grabbed him and broke his finger.
A 7-year-old?
Yeah, a 7-year-old boy. Because it does not compute. Like
I'd love to be that lawyer. That's a good day.
Yeah.
We got precedent, Your Honor.
Right?
We're setting precedent, I should say, Your Honor.
Yeah. It's
I've been
interesting
enrolling in chess tournaments ever since. It happened to me with no luck. Yeah.
Come on. No, it's scary. I'd love to pick your brain on that more off camera, just to see. I'm sure you're looking at some crazy shit because you deal with some big companies.
Yeah, the biggest companies.
Both of you do
in the country. Yeah,
and you're dealing, without giving specifics. I also know, just based on what we've talked about, you're dealing with private entities that are huge, as well, and private individuals that are huge in different places. And I would imagine this is top of their list, the smart ones. That's not good.
It should be. But over half of companies have not trained their employees in how to detect a deepfake. So I think, and God, I hope I'm not right or wrong. I hope I'm right. I'm right. I think it was Ferrari. There was an executive at Ferrari, and I'm sorry if I have the company wrong, who got a phone call from someone that he thought was CEO or some C-suite who wanted him to move some money, right? It was voice cloning. He did not know that, but he had like a gut feeling. So if organizations, again, training and awareness, like you have to listen to your gut and your training. But the guy thought something maybe was off and was smart enough to say, what was that book that you were reading that we were talking about last week? Mm-hmm. And was able to detect that it was not the real person claiming it would be.
What did the AI do when he said that?
I don't know. It probably was like just exploded. Hung up. Yeah. But who knows to do that? Who knows from a family standpoint, do you have safe words or passwords with your family? So I've told my kids, you can see me on YouTube, you can see me on videos, you can see me on stage. If I ever call you, voice or video, and I ask you or tell you to do something that you didn't expect or that sounds a little weird, you need to ask me what the password is. And it's only something we know, right? People need to do that and companies need to do that. When I was a kid, that was, if some van pulls up and says, hey, your mom said to pick you up, we would have a password. It's kind of back to that now.
All right, now if your kid said on like Xbox Live the password, though, I'm giving you advice. You need to have a backup password.
Yeah, that's why my kids don't do online gaming. I'm a mean mom.
Right, even when you're not looking.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They don't have phones?
No, they have nothing.
They got nothing.
They have iPads that are in my bedroom. I control it all.
But even once, if they go in there and around that iPad, they say, Shawnee, that's the password.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that.
They know. Plus, I've scared the hell out of them. They know that it's a secret.
God, that might be child abuse. Scaring your kids with like international espionage.
Yeah.
You will listen to what Mommy says
them.
about AI.
I'm training them.
Okay.
You'd be surprised. I think a lot of people would be surprised how many multinational corporations are lagging behind in defending against these types of things.
Well, you were saying in defense of what you just put up, like 51% of CEOs like haven't even looked at this or whatever. I would have thought that when I was talking with you a second ago, I would have thought that some of the private guys, like the major high influence guys who aren't operating in the corporate structure, would be a little more in tune with that. The fact that some of them aren't is surprising to me. The corporate part, that's not surprising to me.
I found that it's typically, not always, it's regulated industries that get it a little bit more. So like financial sector, right? They see how bad it is and the attacks that they're suffering and the attacks that their customers are suffering.
Yes.
So they're trying to do something and trying to combat. Healthcare, they are behind, but they are trying as well, little by little. But other companies, other industries, it's still like, it can't happen to me attitude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, or they get too dependent on the cybersecurity side of it and not enough on the people, right? So
what do you mean?
Finance as an industry is a perfect example because of how regulated it is. But when I was posing as a money launderer, I recruited bankers constantly.
Yeah.
That would just circumvent the security wickets, right? The thing only works if the people.
Tell them the story.
For the
dude that gave you the inside baseball in the system.
Oh yeah. So I'm working this one guy, and he is a salesman, right? He's a salesman in this company, and he's like emails me every once in a while, say like, "Hey, how's it going? You've bought some stuff from us before." Well, we wanted to make a large technology purchase from this company. Let's just say hypothetically it was laptops. There wasn't, and
he's like, it wasn't.
It was anything but laptops, and so it was like a 500 piece of equipment order. Well, it flagged the system, and I get a phone call from this company's security department saying, "Hey, our security officers need to talk to you. You represent this company. What's going on here?" And I'm thinking, like we talked about with the disguise, I'm like, they found me, I gotta, hit the lam. I'm gonna be hiding.
You're
for the
going
rest of my
downstairs
life.
grabbing passports and cash and cocaine.
Yeah, somebody better
He's
start
like,
getting
yeah.
excited, just throwing things against the wall, freaking out. And so I'm trying to maintain my cool on this phone call and elicit, what's going on, what flagged the system. And what it turned out was everything that we ordered was on sale. Right. And this was actually picked to save a little money by the government when we were doing this
cheap.
order. And so what the security department was afraid of is that whoever was purchasing it was going to buy up all the stock that was on sale and then sell it at actual price somewhere instead of actually using it. And so I throw a big fit about this to the security team, and I'm going to walk. I get a phone call from the salesman after that saying, hey, I can fix it. I smoothed it over with them. Oh, by the way, in the future, if you ever need anything, just let me know, and I'll handle it with security for you. And then over the course of the next year, not only would he take care of it, but he would also tell me, hey, make sure if you're ever doing this, don't do that. It would trip our security area.
Oh
and
my
so we're just
God.
taking notes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Did you ever have moments, like a lot of them, this is obviously one of them, but where they added up, enough of these moments added up where you're like, God, we're so fucked. Like, I should not be able to do all this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The success rate, was what, and I'm not the best person that's ever done this, and I know this from other officers as well. I thought maybe we'll get like 50-50 or like 20% of the time it's going to work. I'm talking almost every single time we try it works.
I've told you guys both this quote before, but my buddy Jim DiOrio, politeness and familiarity breeds access. Truest phrase I've
100%.
ever heard.
Yeah. I always tell mine with my kid is kill him with kindness.
Did I tell you his red ball drill story? Did you ever hear this?
Mm-mm.
It's hilarious. It's funnier when he tells it, of course, because he's like a funny North Jersey Italian guy. But Jim was like very high up FBI. He was undercover there for 11 years and then was international case officer the whole bit. So after his career, he starts getting all these contracts from these guys because he graduated at West Point in 86. So all his buddies are like CEO of this company, CEO of that company. And one unnamed company, his buddy's like, yeah, I think our security's great. Can you just check it out? And Jim's like, yeah, I'll be the judge of that. So he's like... He does it so simply. Wherever the company's headquarters are in some city somewhere, he literally goes to like the Starbucks next to there. And he's like, gets his coffee, he's drinking it like this is going to be so easy. Walks outside, he's like checking to make sure his gun's unloaded and shit. Not advisable, but walks into the first floor. This is all about 3-minute process maybe. Walks into the first floor, goes up to the front desk and I forget what he said, but he's like, oh yeah, I'm just headed back up there again. Thanks again for yesterday, by the way. And the lady goes, oh yeah. And if I'm getting the story slightly wrong, you can see it in episode 48. He explained it like 2 hours in. But then he goes up to the elevator, goes up to the guy's floor, which he's all the way back there. But he goes to the front and he goes, hey, what's up, guys? Did you guys get the donuts I sent through yesterday? They were supposed to come at like 11 a.m., but I never got the comment. They're like, oh my God, we didn't. And he's like, that's so my bad. I'm so sorry. You know what? I'm going to send you a makeup one tomorrow. By the way, he's in right now, right? Yeah. Okay. Walks by. The guy's on the phone. Walks through the floor all the way back to his glass office.
Wow.
Opens up the door, sits down, puts the gun in his face and says, you're dead. We need to talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't do anything. Like you or I could technically, I don't know if I'd be able to pull it off, but like you could technically do it. Because a lot of these places that seem like, oh, it's behind some big building, all the security. No, the fuck it's not.
Yeah, and even that just, aids to a sense of for the employees that somebody else is taking care of it, And humans, so we talk about this a lot. The way that con men, fraudsters, or what we did for a living, the approaches are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you're doing it for, but it's a very similar approach. And so if you take something like change blindness, which magicians use constantly.
Change blindness?
Right. And so if, let's say, you're walking down the street, somebody walks up to you with a map, right? And they're like, hey, can you show me like where this is? They've demonstrated that they could have like a construction crew carrying a big wall walk between us, and then somebody else could take my place, right? And it's, I think 50% of the time, at least, people don't notice.
The gorilla.
Yeah. So you know the gorilla psychology thing. So there's a video
Remind me.
that they can show where it's basketball, like 5-on-5, and some people are in black t-shirts, some people are in white t-shirts, and there's like 3 balls in it, and they say, okay, over the next 20 seconds, I want you to count how many times white passes a basketball. So you're so focused, right, because the brain cannot multitask well on doing it. They can have an actor in a gorilla costume come stand in the middle,
Literally.
go like this, and walk off. And over
Google it.
50% of the time, people do not notice that there was a gorilla in the video that they watched. And so when you take a concept like that and add it to the story you were just talking about, it's very hard for people to notice things that they think they're not supposed to be focused on.
And I'll add what social engineers leverage, in addition to all that, is natural human trust. Humans are trusting. And when you tell me something is blue, I'm going to believe you that it's blue without questioning that.
Yes.
Or the bias that once you've bought into somebody, you want them to continue to be right, even if they're scamming you down the road, right? So,
Yeah, there's vulnerabilities everywhere, man. And like that's the thing. I always live my life like I'm susceptible to everything. Like you'll watch these documentaries on cults and you think, oh, I'm above that. No, the fuck you're not. Everyone, there's something in our hardwiring, in the computer system that can be hacked if we're not fully, even maybe if we are observant, but not fully observant or whatever. There's some human weakness that exists there.
absolutely.
Not even just that. Actually, Jim Lawler and I talk about this. We have for years. Everybody at some point in their life is vulnerable. We all have had our personal rock bottom. And if you haven't yet, you're fucked because it's coming. But it's people like us in the past, not now, we're very nice. It's social engineers, it's fraudsters, it's all the malicious actors who prey on that. AI, for example, we're talking about. AI is looking for disgruntled employees. There are private insurance firms, private security companies, and private law firms that are actively looking for whistleblowers, for example. So based on what you're posting on social media, I can tell if you're pissed off or not. That is a great target, right? And then pulling all the data so I can see what you like and what you don't like, and are you married, are you not married, all these things. And there's your targeting package in seconds versus weeks and months that it used to take. It's frightening.
Yeah. Especially like from that corporate espionage standpoint. If you think about the targeting package that we discussed, if AI is helping to say, here are the 10 people at that company that have access to the information that you want to steal, and here is what's going on in all of their lives, here's what's vulnerable. And then you take somebody who's trained to do this and you create what we would call a perceived serendipitous encounter, right? Where we bump into each other.
What a term.
And you just think,
I just say bump.
That's fake. That's fate, right? It's just happenstance.
Chance encounter.
Right. Yeah. It's very hard to see, right? And so an example of that could be, let's say you're sitting waiting for the bus. If somebody walks up after you to get on the bus with you, you're more suspicious than if they were sitting there before you even showed up.
Like baby reindeer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Wait,
an
baby reindeer.
She sat in the bus stop watching him all the time.
I'm not in on that joke. I'm
You
sorry.
didn't see it?
No.
Oh, you got to watch it.
Okay. I'll watch it another time.
Or an elevator is another example. If you're in a hotel and you're going to go up to your room, if you've already, punched floor 9 and I get on and I'm like, oh, same floor, it's more suspicious that
You
if
here for the
I-
gangbang?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly where this is headed.
I can be.
But if I'm already standing on there and floor 9 is pressed, you don't think that I'm in there to come after you necessarily. You just think that I already know where the gangbang is without you having had to tell me.
Well, I mean, we all know.
That's right. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.